I'm a composer, a musician, a conductor extraordinaire. But Todd is complex. He's complex wonderfully complex as a human and as a screenwriter and as a director. He understands the nuance in life, and he doesn't lead the barn unless he has something to say. He hasn't made a film in 16 years, not because he's lazy, but because he's been waiting for the right thing. And I think you can really feel the depth of thought and in this movie. There's a lot of big questions in the movie, and a lot of incredible, quite dangerous nuance. And I mean, that all comes from him. Well, yeah, I mean, she's a very complex human being, and the moment we find her is a moment of transition. So, that's always an exciting, dramatic moment for any story, I think.
Like you say, it's intense, and who brings the intensity is Lydia Tarr. So I thought, who is the partner of a person like that, of a genius, of an incredible creative persona who has a lot of power? And Sharon is someone in her own right, a very accomplished musician, and also in a very powerful position, as I learned working on the film, that the concert master is a position that is right underneath the conductor, so it holds the whole orchestra together. So I was working on what is Sharon? Is Sharon part of the Lydia Tarr system? Who holds that power up, because you might you might profit from it as well. And so all of it was all in the script, and I tried to take everything I could find to make Sharon interesting by talking a lot about the background story, about why did these two women meet, and what is it that brought them together. And it was the music. And it was the love of music, and be able to create something so beautiful as for example, the Mahler Fifth Symphony. That's where they meet, and that's what Sharon clings onto. That please don't destroy it, up to a certain point where she has to make a decision. Yeah, I was a fan of his two films before. I wasn't aware that it was so long ago, and I know all of Kate's work, and was always a huge admirer of her craft. And to be able to work with two calibers like that, but also, Noémie Merlan, also Sophie, who's just starting, who's a real musician, working with the Dresdner's Philharmonics, it was just an incredible experience and an incredible opportunity also, and the script was already mind-blowing. There was so much in it, there was so much to explore, and it's just, I am so thankful that I can be part of this.
It was an incredibly interesting process for me to join this project, because the film, among so many other things, obviously, is about the process of writing music, the process of creating music, the process of practicing music, rehearsing, communicating music to others, and making music become alive. And it's not about it was never about the final product of a piece of music or concert or anything that was kind of finished and finalized, but it was this really deep dive into what it means to create it and rehearse it, and for me that was just so fascinating, because that's obviously something that I've dedicated my life to, and it's a really rare opportunity to get to bring that to a screen, and it's also something that's very complicated to bring to a screen, because so much of that process, especially when you're writing, is very intrinsic, so a lot of the process of how you write is hearing internally, which is something that's not a voice and it's not an instrument, because it's this entity that lives inside you that you have to then translate, And I think, if we would have underscored that, we would have missed the magic of that delicateness of creating, before it becomes a thing, And I think that to me was the most interesting part, because how the hell do you do that, Her inner tempo, her inner alignment and misalignment are so much of what informs her character and her kind of frustrations and passions and all of this. I think all of this for me so much of it stemmed from the music, so it was really important to kind of understand what her music was, that the music that she wanted to be writing as a composer, and then the music that she's ends up kind of on the big stage with was something totally different. So I didn't really draw from Mahler and that whole situation, but we felt like her aspirations were leaning more towards wanting to create something more experimental and more open and something less rigid, but she finds herself in this kind of rigid position. So we basically tempo mapped the whole film, Todd and I. So I've been working on this for about 1.5 years. So we tempo mapped all the characters, how they walk and how they think and how they are. There's a whole kind of tempo map to that, and there's a set BPM to their tempo, And then I wrote the music to accompany those tempo differences, the inner tempo of these characters, and that's music that we actually never hear in the film, but we feel it through the characters, we feel it through their tempo that we see on screen. So the music was very informative without us ever hearing it, because it's that's the intrinsic part that we, that's how we translated, feeling the inner music of these characters without actually hearing it. And then I wrote the music, of course, that she is writing in the film as well, and so I worked with Kate on just kind of trying to form her composition character, and the music that she's writing, and in the film that music never gets actually finished, so we never hear that finished music in the film, but that's coming out on a record on Deutsche Grammophon, which is going to exist in our parallel universe of reality.
Well, I'd say my character is the character that actually breaks up all that tension quite a lot of the time. So that was a lot of fun to have these scenes that were really light-hearted, where I did things without, or Olga does things without worrying about any consequences, and she just lives life to the full and makes the most of it all, and she does things her own way. And so it was so much fun to play a character who, I don't know, is so strong and just, she doesn't bend, and she fights back. Yeah. Cello, so I'm still studying. I'm a music student. I'm halfway through my bachelor's, but that takes acting as well, so I would still count myself very much like a beginner, but that takes decades and decades of work, building the right muscles and knowledge and awareness, and I think a lot of it did help and translate into the acting, in terms of the being able to work together with other people and being aware of their emotions and being able to kind of bounce off them maybe, and being in contact with lots of different characters because of the different kinds of cello pieces we play. Maybe that helped, I'm not sure, but it's quite hard to make parallels because in my opinion they are quite different. Yeah.
Well, I've been thinking about this character for several years, and wasn't sure what I would do with her, or if I would do anything with her at all. I mean, I hadn't made a film in a very long time, and at one point I thought about actually, writing some fiction or whatever, and then Peter Kujawski and Kiska Higgs from Focus Features said at the very beginning of the pandemic, write whatever you want, we just want you to write a script for us, and so it became a screenplay. Well, I hope nothing, other than that it's the same person making a film, I was a much younger man when I made those other films. It's I don't really remember them. It's not like I've gone back and looked at them or anything. So that would be for someone else to say, not me. Well, we started talking about making this film in the beginning of September of 2020, and so we worked for nearly a year before we were actually in rehearsals in Berlin. And those conversations were both practical and philosophical and experimental, and they were very rich, and that was a kind of a huge luxury that we had that amount of time before we actually got into rehearsal. That's not often the case.
Todd is a very precise filmmaker, and the overall development of this character is laid down already in the script and then in the shooting. So of course, we worked on it, but overall it was set beforehand. This is a film that plays in her very different moments of life, and as different they are, as different is the style of the filmmaking. So the more dreamlike versions are shot differently with different styles. So we just stuck to what we had. Yeah, we had this brilliant rehearsal scenes, which are fulminant in all the way, with multi-camera and big spectacle. And we had the very, very, very special score of Hildur, which helped us in building up attention throughout a lot of scenes. Yeah. We had a layout of her own score, so we worked with her with promo pieces, and then she redid according to our sketches. She did the final score.
So her creative space, her studio, was supposed to feel very different, like something that is a strong contrast to the brutalist architecture that's more lived in, that kind of has traces of her old life, that's traces to her time in the Amazon, that we don't really get told that story, but we kind of feel it in details. We have a lot of fantastic mid-century architecture that we're using, like the concert halls, which is actually 4 different spaces, like a space in Dresden, the library building in Berlin, and then a third building. It's also mid-century, very fantastic design, and then a 4th space that we use just as sort of background with added spaces that we built.
What we try to do is that we put questions out without trying to find the answers, and just get like our intuition, who is it and where do we want to go with the clothes. And I didn't want to make a costume design where anybody looks at the clothes. I just wanted that they look very casual, but help her, yes, to create her personality. For each work, for each collaboration for her, we go through a complete different process. Yes, it's completely different how we react, what we do, how our day of day is. Because sometimes it's easier and sometimes it's harder. And there were moments where with Lydia Tár it was really difficult and hard. And sometimes in the evening I just tried to get her out and to do some more fun. But I really tried to be her companion in this process. And I think that is what a costume designer does, and much more in contemporary costume design than in period. I think Todd was the absolute base of everything, because it is his story. He is really like the author of everything. And I listened to him, and I asked him 1,000 of questions, and he was always there. And it was like a 24-hour, 7 days job. Like, we really saw us a lot, and we spoke a lot, and we called a lot, and we discussed a lot, because it was such an intimate job. Yeah.